So I'm walking into my backyard just to kind of take a survey of what the cold has done to it over the last few days. A lot of it still looks pretty good, but a lot of the edibles have been really beaten down, at least the ones that are not meant to thrive throughout the winter. You can see some of the damage in this canna lily. Take a look along the fence. The passion flower vine is going to need a lot of pruning. And if you can take a look right here, these are my banana trees, what's left of them. But I'm going to have to do some heavy pruning, and they should come back after I cut a lot of the dead branches off. So really hoping and praying for the best there. But the banana trees really took a beating in this really cold few days that we had here in Central Florida. The grapevines running along my fence here, these will be coming back pretty soon. They normally would look like this anyway. During the winter and the fall, they start losing their leaves. So those will start kicking into gear, getting ready for the next harvest. The bromeliads don't look so bad. They actually survive pretty well. Let's take a walk back here. There's my moringa tree. Pretty much no leaves at this point. Everything that's on there is dried. So that would be pruned back heavily to give it a chance to come back in full force. So there are a lot of branches, but I think I'm going to cut back some of those branches as well. You can see a lot of the lemongrass that I mentioned in another video. And these will be pruned back as well. My papaya tree, which we're coming up on right now, really took a toll during this cold weather. I managed to harvest quite a few of the papayas, and there's one that I might be able to save, but I think a lot of them are just going to be thrown away. And I will cut down the papaya tree at least halfway down to give it a chance to branch out. Now back here is my granddaughter's secret garden, what's left of it, and she was so sad when we came out here recently and there was nothing there, but these will all be trimmed back, and a lot of the periwinkles and other plants that are in here will spring back up. Let me give you a tour. That is the bougainvillea bush that actually took over. You can see where I chopped it down, and that's just a pile of the branches. That used to extend way out to here, but I chopped it back and it is still managed to come back, so I'm going to be pruning that back heavily as well. And these branches here will be filled with soil and leaves and will become a growing mound for other vegetables that I plan to plant in the spring. So let's go back this way. And over here I have two more mounds. On this one I just happened to stick some kale in, and it's doing really well, and a little bit of lettuce. And on that side you can see some pellitour, which is an edible weed. But over the springtime there will be a lot more plants put on here. And then on this smaller mound we've got kale and some lettuce. Some of the lettuce has gone to seed, but we managed to eat quite a bit of it. So we've got quite a bit over here. I think these do pretty well during the winter time, but they were also protected by the frame of lemongrass that's around it. So I don't think they really took that much of a beating. And what you're looking at over there is my guava tree in a pot, and it managed to survive, but it's going to be pruned heavily to give it some time to regenerate and come back. And this is just a mulberry cutting, which actually I've gotten mulberries from, but this will also, I think I'll be putting this into a bigger pot so that it will give it more time to grow. What we've got back here is it used to be my Japanese corner. I did have a huge tree that created a lot of shade. So right now I'm just kind of reworking it into more of a meditation area. I put down a lot of cardboard, and I've been throwing down pine needles as I rake them up. So you can see I still have my Japanese lanterns. My granddaughter loves to come out and play with them, so don't really... the covers are off. Some of them you can put candles in, and I think the big one you can actually put a candle in there as well, and you can light them up. And I've got my little meditating frog right there. My granddaughter also loves to play with that. This is one of her favorite areas to come, apart from her secret garden. So I'll be doing a lot of work in here to get this cleaned up. But I'm going to be waiting a little bit before I do all of that, because I know there's supposed to be another cold spell that's coming through. So I'm just going to leave all the burnt areas and just wait for the cold to be over with. I think the lemongrass I will most likely chop down this weekend, since it's all gone to seed. I've saved a lot of the seeds, and some of them have most likely blown, so I know that I'm going to be having a lot of lemongrass come up, and I'll just simply dig those up and pot them. And I will use some of the lemongrass, because even though it's dried, I can still use it, at least to make tea. And I can probably salvage some of the root, close to the root, for cooking. But I will be definitely cutting this down pretty soon. What you're looking at here is what's left of the what we call falls roselle. It's Hibiscus acetosella, and I've harvested a lot of the seeds. Some of them are still on here, but I've harvested a lot of the seeds, and what I'll do is just prune this back heavily, and this will come back from the root, but I will also end up having a lot of new plants in this area because the seeds have dropped. Well, many of the seeds have dropped. And over here I do have a couple things planted. Doesn't look like much right now. This used to be my stevia plant, and I should be getting a few plants here because it went to seed, and I ended up just throwing some of the seeds back in. So if you watched my video on the yard-long beans, you'll know that this is where they were, and this area will be cleaned up and revitalized so that I can plant another crop of beans in this area. And take a spin around, and what you're looking at here, this is the asparagus that I planted in pots, and they will be 3-year roots this year, so I'll be actually getting my first harvest of asparagus sometime in March, April, throughout the summer. And this little guy is we call it Japanese plum. I started them from seeds, so I will be putting this into the ground shortly, since I know it's most likely root bound, and there are several that I started from seeds and gave away to neighbors and friends. This here is what's called a bird nest anthurium, and it was used by the Mayan Indians for arthritis. So what you do is just simply take a leaf and you break it up, put it into your tub, and you soak. But right now it is extremely burnt, and I'm just going to leave the dried leaves on to protect the new growth that will come up from the center of the plant. I'm not sure if this would do much right now since they're so dry, but it might. What you're looking at here is an avocado that I started from seed in a pot, and another banana tree, and hopefully I can get those revived, but they took a beating from the cold. Here's another mound. This was probably my first mound that I ever started. Had sweet potatoes, which are now gone, but there's still a trail somewhere. And then of course there's a kohlrabi, the last remaining kohlrabi, some more kale, and this is going to need a lot of cleanup before I can put anything on here. There are also some basil seeds that I know will be coming up because I had a lot of basil in this spot, and of course there's more kale. And I planted this rosemary about 5 years ago, and I cut it several times, and I use it a lot in cooking. I also use it to make oil. I did at the time that I was trying to make my hair grow, and it really helps with that, but I've recently shaved my head, but it's really good for cooking with. is an area where I have a lot of sweet potato vines planted, and you probably can't see much of the vines because it's so overgrown with pellitory and a few other things, but hopefully I can get the potato vines to come back, because there I can still see the vines themselves, but there are no leaves. And I do have a lot more sweet potato slips that I will be planting. But all that you're looking at right there, that's all. It's an edible weed called pellitory. And I'll do another video on that some other time. And over here, let's come across. These are mushrooms. I have not figured out if they are edible as yet, but just happen to have an old branch. And one of the things that when you know that a branch is ready for growing things on is if you see mushrooms appearing on them. So I would like to find out if these mushrooms are edible. So if you happen to see this video and you know what kind of mushrooms these are, can you go ahead and just comment down below? Because I would really love to know. Then I can do some more research and confirm for myself. But the mushrooms are quite large. And the mushrooms are growing beside spiderwort. I've got a lot of edible weeds in the yard. This is spiderwort. And you can always tell the weeds that are good for that particular time of the year. Even if in the middle of winter, I've got a lot of edible weeds that are coming up, and spiderwort is one of them. It actually grows pretty much all year in my yard. These are the flowers, but the flowers only last one day, so don't look like much, but usually they're like a purple or periwinkle color. What you're looking at here is another edible weed called poor man's pepper plant, and it's everywhere. Here's more spiderwort, more pepper, and one that is just coming up is plantain, and I will talk about that. Actually, I think I did a video on that one already, so I can just link it right there. More poor man's pepper. And what you're looking at here are some cuttings from a chia tree spinach. And I've got a couple cuttings that I'm hoping will do well. These are just beginning to send out some new growth, you can see. And then right beside it is a giant Brussels sprout, and you can see that they're actually beginning to form. This is another the chia tree spinach cutting, and this one is just beginning to come back, so I'm going to be taking this one and put into a bigger pot. And back there is a plumeria, and this is actually a longevity spinach cutting, and I'm going to be putting this into the ground, allowing it to spread. What I have here are some beautyberry cuttings that I took from a tree that I found along the side of the road. So I'm going to try to get those to grow, and I think I might be successful, since it looks like there's some new growth on there. So those will be planted. And I came out here the other day and found out that my turmeric pot was overturned, and I need to fill that up because there's actually some turmeric growing in there, but I'm going to be putting this into another pot, and hopefully I can save that. Right here, this is a sweet potato that I'm trying to get some slips grown from so that I can plant again. And it took a little bit of beating from the cold, but I think it's going to be fine. And this is a moringa that I started from seed. I've got quite a few moringa trees in the back. And this one, you can see that it died here, but it's now beginning to send out some new growth, which is good. So I'll get that one put into the ground as well. And this is some Cuban oregano that I will also be putting into the ground. This was started from a cutting. What I've got here are some asparagus plants that I started from seed. So these will be put into a bigger pot because they are so ready. The roots will be fine, you can see. So I'll put them into bigger pots, and then in about 2 years they will be ready for their first true crop. And I've got quite a few of those. And in this area, I also did a video on the Wandering Jew. Some of it managed to do well, some of it got really burnt. Here is another one of the Hibiscus acetosella, and I've already harvested quite a few of the seeds, but you can see that there's still a few more on here. But this again will be pruned all the way down, and then it will come back up from the roots. And right along here we've got more lemongrass heading out to the front of the yard now. We are now in the front yard, and what you're looking at is just another bromeliad garden, which these hold up pretty well during the cold weather. And here's another Hibiscus acetosella that I've harvested, I think, pretty much all the seeds from, so I will be pruning that back in a couple of days. More lemongrass, and let me see if I can. And this is my avocado tree, which actually
did really well during this last freeze. The last part of the video abruptly was cut short, but I sure hope you enjoyed the rest of the video, and that you will check back in the future for the video in which I do all of this, the cleanup, and get ready for the spring planting.